ERS.
I will not allow myself to be the scapegoat in this case, and I look very much forward to the appeal.
That's Bridget Kelly, who was just sentenced to 18 months in jail for her participation in Bridgegate. Aaron Katersky, who's been following the story from the very beginning, joins us from ABC News in New York. Good morning, Aaron Katersky.
Good morning. This was a rather surprise ending, I think, especially for Bridget Kelly. As a mother of four, she had appealed for leniency so that she could be with her kids, so that she could, avoid having to spend now 18 months in federal prison for something that she says she really didn't do. She took responsibility for her now famous email time for some traffic problems in Fort Lee, which seems to have triggered the lane closures at the George Washington Bridge. But she and her lawyer questioned whether she really had the authority to do anything, suggesting the true power in New Jersey lies with the governor.
What about the other guy? What did he do wrong?
He was the one who was Christie's appointee at the Port Authority, which is this bi-state agency that controls the bridge. And he had pretty much ignored pleas from the mayor of Fort Lee, New Jersey, where the bridge is anchored, to do something. He demanded an explanation, and Baroni kind of ignored his phone calls, and by his own admission before sentencing, got caught up in the whole notion of the scheme. Even though, again, he says that this was not his idea and that he was only a participant.
Okay, so they both say it wasn't their idea. Both of them are going to jail. How come Christie was at the White House and nowhere near the courtroom and or being indicted for anything he did wrong in this?
Well, he was invited by President Trump to run his opioid task force, but more to the point, prosecutors never found a smoking gun. They never were able to tie Christie directly to the scheme in a way that they believe jurors would believe. And so they charged, as they've said publicly, only those people they believe they could convict. And it's a rather unsatisfying conclusion for some, because the whole trial was about Christie, about the political culture in his office, about the kinds of people he associated with, who he would appoint to do perhaps his bidding. And yet Christie was always able to say, I knew nothing, and no one could ever prove otherwise.
Did they try and cut a deal with this Bridget Kelly and say, we'll give you immunity if you tell all?
I'm sure that there were talks, and the problem for Bridget Kelly is that she was never able to supply smoking gun evidence against the governor, and there was really no one else to bargain for. If she had an email or a text message, but she simply said she went to inform the governor and that he gave his blessing for closing lanes for what Kelly at the time says she thought was a legitimate traffic study. The judge said there was no other way to read closing lanes at the bridge than an act of political retribution and with intent to wreak havoc.
Early on, there was a guy who took the fifth.
Yep.
What happened to that guy?
Well, David Wildstein was the one who ended up cooperating, and he, by his own admission, was the architect of the plot. And there was a now infamous photograph of Wildstein, Baroni, and Governor Christie kind of laughing at a 9/11 commemoration ceremony. And to prosecutors, that was the time when they were discussing all of the traffic problems that were going on at the George Washington Bridge at the time in September of 2013. And by Wildstein's admission, he hatched the plot and relied on Baroni and Kelly to carry it out. All three of them at trial suggested that Christie knew far more than he ever publicly let on.
Did Christie say anything yesterday about any of this?
He was only briefly asked about it on the Today Show when he appeared to discuss his new role at the White House regarding opioid addiction, and he gave his stock answer that he didn't know, and he had ended up distancing himself from these two former associates of his. And for the governor, that's been his constant position. But Bridgegate really derailed his ambitions. This was not the White House job Christie wanted, and Bridgegate may have done him in because it was on its face about the worst offense of government abuse. The judge said it was abuse of power. Prosecutors said it was abuse of power. and it was power that was turned onto ordinary citizens just trying to go to work or school in order to get back at a mayor. I mean, that was just, it was sinister.
Yeah. Chris Christie, still governor of New Jersey. Any chance he may pardon his two people?
You know, he doesn't have the power because they're federal charges. So Christie is at this point powerless to do anything. Maybe he could suggest it to President Trump if, in fact, they have that kind of relationship. But so far, the two say they're going to appeal. And as you heard Bridget Kelly say yesterday, she's not going to be the scapegoat. She clearly believes that while she's responsible for what she called an embarrassing email, she is the scapegoat for others.
Aaron Katersky, is this the end of Bridgegate?
It's the end as far as some are concerned, but assuming there's appeals, this could stretch, for another number of months. And I think it dogs Chris Christie wherever he goes next.
Yeah, Aaron Katersky, ABC News correspondent in New York. Aaron, thanks for checking in.
Thank you, McGraw.
657 KTRS.